right, so we are discussing Veteran Student Services by Kendall, Clement, and Katie. I'm going to use this a lot. So this was an interesting one. This was both of our #1 choices, I think, for our projects, and it was a really interesting area to dig into, not knowing much about it going into it, and then the people that we met and their stories of how they got there, I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we got to meet with slightly a variety of people from different colleges, different experiences, different backgrounds, and we'll share that with you later.
So we just have an opening question for you, a couple. First, what issues come to mind when thinking about veteran students? Any first words? Kelly?
Yeah.
Funding.
What else do you think, especially when you compare them to a non-veteran student or a traditional student? Corinne?
Age and mental health.
Okay. Carly?
Feeling like you can't connect with other students because maybe you haven't had the same experience.
Yeah.
Also wondering what sort of obligations they may still have outside of class, like related to the military.
Yeah.
Even like housing too, like a lot of them are older, or some of them are older, so they're married or have families. How's that?
Great. Yeah, those are all issues.
Say moving back and forth between education, so getting deployed and coming back.
Yeah. Great. Yeah,
Yes.
those are all
All of that is accurate.
very important things that came up, especially in our interviews. The people that we talked to are very knowledgeable on all of those things that you discussed, and those are all.
Yeah, you listed some unique needs. They have families or like coming and going off campus deployments and all of that. So, yes. Remedial classes is another issue that we kind of talked to our supervisors, our interviewees about. Folks have been away for school from 10 years. They need that basic like math class in order to dig into programs. Deployments can be sudden. That was an issue. And how the services accommodate that quick transition and really trying to make that as easy as possible because that student has enough to worry about at that point and really how the college works to be proactive about that deployment. So we have just a 30-second little video here talking about, so this is one student's perspective, Montgomery College students, this is in Alabama, and his perspective.
I was going to say.
Studies usually show that veterans feel like they don't have a good handle on what their benefits are as students. They don't know where to go for information. So going to the counselor's office, I was really looking to lean on them for their guidance. To really, I was fully expecting to go in there and to leave, sign up for all my classes, having a clear direction, path as to where I was going to go through school and everything like that, and I didn't get that.
They kind of want you to decide what it is that you want to do. And coming from a military background where you're told everything that you're supposed to do, the variety of classes that they have here is sometimes overwhelming. I think soldiers are used to following roadmaps. We're used to knowing that we're going from.
That's what we're speaking to is that difference of culture that students are transitioning to from the military, where this is an interviewee that we were talking to. These students are coming in, they're told exactly what to do. If they have a question, it's a yes-no answer, it's black and white. These are what your orders are. And then coming into the world of higher education, you're expected to have a little more independence and self-efficacy, and like that is a huge culture shock for a lot of these students. And so folks who are working in this office need to sort of understand the cultural differences between the institution of the military and then the institution of higher ed.
Yeah, I think that came up quite a bit. Most of the people that we interviewed that work in veteran services were veterans themselves. One particularly that I talked to at Normandale, all of the information for our interviewees are on our handout here. So Carrie Rushgirl I talked to at Normandale, not a veteran herself, but has experience working with veteran services outside of higher ed. And she suggested just having an idea of what the experience is like for these veteran students, not being afraid to ask questions, being knowledgeable and open-minded, those are all really valuable traits for, and those help her in her everyday kind of servicing students.
Sometimes veteran students, when they return to a campus, they feel like they can't connect to students because of their non-traditional age, and so professionals working in the Veteran Student Services really help ease that transition by connecting them to other resources, whether it's other veterans on campus or veterans in the community. And then also what's prevalent on a lot of university campuses is the Student Veterans Association, which is a national association, but it has different chapters at universities. And there's been a lot of positive feedback from veteran students about those like clubs and orgs that are veteran specific. So in Minnesota, there are a couple pieces of legislation that have come through with MnSCU. In 2006, there was $600,000 appropriated to these colleges under MnSCU to pay for staff and for space for veteran students. So it was required for them to have at least one point person that helps these students navigate their benefits, as well as easing that transition and accommodating any deployments. So recognizing coursework was a huge effort that Minnesota has made to recognize their service. If you're doing computer tech or medic stuff, any of those types of classes and courses that students may have, or soldiers might have had to take within the military, working with the American Council on Education to get those courses approved for higher education credit was a big effort towards Minnesota. And then also in 2006, Minnesota offered in-state tuition to all veterans, whether you are from Florida and you're moving up here, or you would, I don't know. But that in-state tuition is for all veterans.
And also their family members.
Yeah.
Dependents of those veteran students can also pay in-state tuition. So, I mean, those are people that can also benefit from these legislation. So, I was going to talk a little bit about, one of my interviewees really emphasized how Minnesota has been a leader in kind of creating these policies and having these services towards veterans. And I guess I just wanted to speak to, talking to her was really inspiring. She, you know, she kind of had the mentality that she was proud to work in Minnesota because they are a leader in providing good quality services for veterans, and you know, before the other states kind of fell in line.
Mm-hmm. So in 2007, there was another sort of add-on to this legislation. More money was given to these programs through MnSCU, and that came in the form of tuition assistance. And so if with your FAFSA and your GI Bill, if there was still a gap in what it would cost to attend a university and what their benefits total were, the state would chip in for that difference up to $10,000 for your lifetime. So not like exorbitant amounts, but enough to help cover that gap. It is important to think about too the GI Bill covering not only tuition but a living stipend, so that can help them pay for groceries and rent and anything that kind of helps them simply focus on the school part and not having to worry about finding resources to pay car insurance or whatever. So 2007, beyond the tuition benefits, there were a lot of online resources that came to through MnSCU, and so that really was accommodating for students who were overseas currently and were trying to register for classes when they were coming back. A call center, which really like almost 24/7 call center, and a lot of online resources came to be in 2007 in Minnesota as well.
Next we'll talk what the CAS standards say for veteran and military programs. Here, this is kind of just a quote that we took from the CAS standards. It says that these services should include admission support, orientation, financial aid, housing, and logistics, advising, mentoring, and learning communities. So the emphasis here is, I guess, on should, and then we also were kind of, I guess, I don't know the word, alarmed or interested in the fact that all of these services are, you know, all across the board when you think of different institutions and different colleges. So these people really need to be knowledgeable not only about the GI Bill and services that are funded through the government, but also support that your campus has, and how you can kind of coordinate with them and facilitate a seamless transition from being a veteran or a service member to a college student.
Also, we thought was interesting was that Minnesota has these legislations in 2006, 2007, and really trying to get the ball rolling on those services. However, the CAS standards the veteran student services didn't exist in the CAS standards until 2012. And so for the CAS standards, it's a really new department or functional area. And we, I guess, yeah, Minnesota kind of proud of the standards that we had set and the legislation that we required. And then now hopefully those military services with the CAS standards are really kind of upping their game as well. You guys feel free to ask questions or comments so far.
So talking about, I mean, you said the emphasis is on should and the CAS standard. So you learn, I imagine you learned from the professionals you interviewed about the programs on their campus. Did you get the impression that they were operating under this model, or that it was still kind of a piecemeal here and there kind of thing? Or
yeah, I think the admission support and financial aid kind of go hand in hand when it comes to navigating the GI Bill systems and making sure that this credit will be covered because it's towards this major. And so they really are doing a lot of advising, and the advising is almost dependent on their GI Bill and what qualifies. I didn't learn much about any specific housing, except that they worked with students to make sure that they know that their GI Bill can cover housing and rentals. And yeah, it seemed like their job descriptions were really long and had a lot, like they're covering entire offices on campuses, but there are generally one or two people working at these colleges. So
I think the biggest thing that I learned is that they find support through other offices on campus. So they might not necessarily be knowledgeable about housing or orientation or be doing those programming themselves, but they're connecting and making those close relationships.
yeah, and it's
with
essentially
other
their job
offices.
to make sure everyone's thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
So they're coordinating the services, not necessarily providing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yep.
making sure that it's available and
Sure.
there, and it's, the quality is good.
Cool.
and also making connections with off-campus resources as well, like local VA centers or VFWs was a big part of their.
Work placement centers, things like
Yeah.
that in the community. They're reaching out not to those services to make sure that they have the knowledge to give to their students.
Cool. Are we talking about our?
Yeah, so next we're going to transition. We wanted to talk a little bit about our contemporary issues, something that we thought was interesting, and we'd like to get your feedback on that too. So basically, yeah, we'll just show you a graph, or what is this, a chart that we got from an article recently, and specifically talking about veteran enrollments and trends for them enrolling in for-profit institutions. So especially noticing the increase here, I don't have the pointer. The increase here from the 2009 to 2010 school year to 2012 to 2013. So these are, were they the top, eight out of the top 10 schools that veterans were highly enrolled in were for-profit institutions.
Yeah, so these top 8 schools receive the most GI Bill benefits. So there are top 10 that they talked about in this article, and it included Emory-Riddle as well and University of Maryland systems. But of the top 10 schools that are receiving GI Bill benefits, they're for-profit. And so why is what we wanted to ask about that. And it seems like a lot of people are asking why for-profit institutions are really increasing their enrollment. Well,
does anyone have any ideas for why that might be?
Well, I'm just kind of thinking if we talk about how there's always kind of that disconnect and extra of like, where do I find a fit? Like I know that at more for-profit schools there's less of those resources there, so it's just kind of everybody's on a straight shot of you're going to classes, this is what you're doing. It's like you're going to a mall type college where nobody's getting really any other of those resources that are set up there. So maybe that just looks like the most preferable best track to go on. And I think if, you know, we're saying Minnesota is so evolutionary that it's, you know, if those resources aren't available other places, that maybe that just looks like the best fit for
Yeah.
some vets.
It can be appealing in the flexibility in the online stuff. What we'll talk quickly about is our criticism of for-profits. I think you might have some numbers on just the cost. On average, taxpayers, because we're paying the benefits, are spending $7,900 at for-profit institutions for a semester, whereas if they attend a public school, it's $3,900. So it's like a lot more expensive, and a lot of these places are not accredited, and there's a lot of criticism and research going on, like right now. This really in-depth Senate article or committee report that we read just came out in late July of this year, and it was talking about how they have predatory marketing and recruitment styles, and so like really focusing on veteran student benefits because there's this 90-10 rule. So like, I don't know, they found a loophole in their funding as an institution, and they are seemingly preying on veterans benefits to, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think kind of a lot of questions came up when thinking about that. Like, you know, like Naida said, it might be appealing for veteran students to be transitioning to these schools because of the challenges that we talked about in the beginning of the presentation, how these students typically are significantly older than a traditional student. They might be have families and children, and so the online format might be more appealing to them. So I encourage you, if that interests you, to think more about that and read into it a little bit, especially if you're interested in working with veteran students.
So we could criticize for-profit, but we didn't interview anybody.
We'll spend a little more time on for-profits next month.
Okay. So in our experience, we, talking to nonprofit institutions, found that there are challenges just navigating all of the different bureaucratic systems, whether it's the government and their benefits, the college, and students' sort of indecision a lot with their work, and wearing many hats. All those different roles they have to play can prove to be a challenge. Rewards, you're really serving a unique population. It's almost like minority serving. And so you gain a lot of genuine relationships with that. You can really get to know those veteran students really well that you're working with. So it seemed that overall, the folks that we talked to are really happy in their positions, and it's warm and fuzzy for them.
We have 2 minutes for questions.
2 minutes for questions. Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned this and I missed it, but did you find that a lot of the professionals you spoke with were from a military background themselves?
Yeah. 3 out of the 4 interviewees that we had, and then, you know, I'd also try to get to know other people that work in the office, ask about them if they're veterans, and majority of those people were also veterans themselves.
And Carrie's husband is, so
Yeah.
she has very direct experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did any or all of them have student affairs background?
That's a good question.
One, Matthew, who's highlighted in our handout here, he helped start a veteran trio service at a college, Suffolk University in Boston. And so he transitioned to that role from a homeless vet center in Boston, or it was like wraparound services, he said, for homeless vets, transitioned into higher ed, realized that he was a veteran student at one point and felt super disoriented. And then when he started to get into that, he really has dug it. So he was there for a while and then moved to Metro within the last few years. Dane.
Did you guys like talk to any students or read about like how students feel they're being served?
Here's some articles with quotes from students. A lot of, I don't know, kind of went back and forth. A lot of students saw challenges connecting with fellow students, like they're 18 years old, and It
Yeah.
was like kind of.
We didn't talk to many. We didn't really talk to
No.
many students because we really wanted to focus on the professionals and the skills that they have in their, what they think, or in how they interpret this.
But I don't know. There's a lot of YouTube resources with interviews
Yeah.
that you can look into too. There's like lists of questions you should not ask a veteran student, and kind of how that